Welcome to our virtual presentation on self-regulation. My name is Heather Dobell. I'm an occupational therapist who works for Children's Therapy Services through Soldiers Memorial Hospital, Orillia.
And I'm Shalyn Humanick, occupational therapist as well, who also works for Children's Therapy Services through Soldiers Memorial Hospital, Orillia. We are both occupational therapists who work within the early intervention system here in Simcoe County, servicing children from birth through to school entry.
So let's talk about what brought you here today. As occupational therapists who work in early intervention, parents will often come to us due to concerns with their children for what they have identified as behaviors, such as short attention span, difficulty learning, being aggressive to others, and many other challenging behaviors. What we do know is that many of these behaviors that parents are identifying as possible clues that their child may be having difficulty with regulation.
The purpose of this workshop is to help you to understand and to delve a little bit deeper in your understanding of how to best help your child to be successful and minimize the challenging behaviors and to support their state of regulation. So what we're going to hopefully cover today is that we're going to teach you about self-regulation and the importance of it. You guys are going to learn about the development of self-regulation, as well as the really important factor of co-regulation. We're also going to talk about how to support your child in being regulated, and as well help you become a detective and learn some strategies on teaching and maintaining their state of regulation.
All of us in early intervention often refer to this framework to illustrate how children develop skills. As you can see, the foundation of this pyramid is self-regulation and being calm and alert. At the top of this pyramid is communication and all the school readiness skills, such as fine motor skills, independence and self-care, and social skills, which are represented in the many stars. When your child is not calm and alert, they do not have a solid foundation to be ready or available for learning. Therefore, it is difficult for them to be able to move up the pyramid in order to learn and engage. Since they are unable to move up the pyramid, it is our role as parents and caregivers to learn how to help your child become available for learning by supporting them to be calm and alert and regulated. When they are then calm and alert, that is where the learning happens, as they have a solid foundation to move up the pyramid to access the needed skills to master, achieve, and participate in everyday activities.
So what is self-regulation? Self-regulation is how well someone stays calm, alert, and responsive in the face of various life stressors, as quoted by Shankar. So really, self-regulation allows you to stay in the moment and be responsive. So why is self-regulation so important? It is the building block for many aspects of development, learning, and growth, such as learning language, school success, social and play skills, attention and problem-solving skills, and overall mental and physical health. Research tells us that self-regulation is one of the most important skills for future success.
We all have stressors in our lives that cause us to become dysregulated. Listed on the slide are just a few of the stressors that families can experience. Now spend a few minutes to think of what you do to cope with all that stress to return to a feeling of being calm and regulated. Perhaps it's taking a break, maybe it's calling a friend or a loved one, maybe you take a hot bath or go for a walk or another form of exercise. Did you need a hug? Do you sit in a quiet room or do you turn the music up and dance it out? Your child also goes through things that cause stress to them. They just don't have the ability yet to independently access the appropriate skills at the appropriate time to maintain their own regulation and respond appropriately.
Research tells us that kids do well if they can. They want to play, explore, learn, but most importantly, they want connections and to be loved unconditionally. Knowing that children do well if they can, it is important that we, as parents and caregivers, understand why a child is demonstrating the behaviors that they are showing. What is going on? What are they trying to tell us? It is our job to teach our kids how it feels to be regulated. Every child is different and has different needs. And as parents and caregivers, it is our role to help support and find the best strategies to help each child's unique needs in order to feel and be regulated. The ultimate goal is that the child will learn what it likes to be regulated and therefore be able to return to that feeling independently.
So let's figure out what your child is trying to tell you. When a child acts out, parents will often call this a behavior or say, "My child is misbehaving," when in fact they are trying to communicate something in the only way they know how. As occupational therapists, we typically refer to this as dysregulation. Again, it is our job to understand what is going on. What caused them to act out? What are they trying to tell us? And how can we help them to return to a state of regulation?
So this picture is to illustrate that what we see in the child's behavior is really just the tip of the iceberg. Because as the picture represents, there is actually more that's lying underneath the surface. So that just is representing that there are more factors or stressors that's happening to the child that is actually causing that behavior. So you might see hitting, biting, etc. But as we know, based on what we said earlier, that kids do well if they can. Therefore, it is our job as a detective to figure out what is really going on below the surface and why. We want you to know that not all stress is bad. Sometimes we can get so excited that the excitement just overtakes us. We have a fun video for you to watch to illustrate this point perfectly. Unfortunately, due to copyright and issues with YouTube, we can't embed the video in here, but if you could take a couple minutes to copy and paste this YouTube link into a new tab and watch this video, because it's about the actress Kristen Bell and how she describes her emotions and her response to something that was so exciting and overwhelming for her.
When we look at this video of Kristen Bell, we see that she had such strong positive feelings and emotions that she became dysregulated and lost all of her ability to understand and engage in what was going on around her. If you watch the video, you would see that she lost her language skills and she wasn't able to communicate effectively, and she appeared that she was unable to fully enjoy the moment despite the fact that it was something that she was very interested and excited about. If we bring this experience in this video back, or if you think of a time that you were so excited or overwhelmed yourself in your own personal life, if we bring it back to the pyramid, we see that at those times we don't have a solid foundation of being calm, alert, and regulated. And therefore, we were at that time unable to move up the pyramid to engage effectively and to access our communication skills or to be able to participate in the activity. As we move through talking about self-regulation, keep this pyramid in mind to remember that self-regulation is a foundation skill that is needed for participation and learning. Now let's take a closer look at what influences self-regulation so that we can better become detectives at figuring out how to help our children when they do become dysregulated. These three domains each influence each other, and when working well, supports the state of regulation. We're now going to take a closer look at each of these domains and see how they work together to support regulation.
So one of the domains is the biological domain, which includes your physiological state. This includes your nutrition, if you're thirsty, tired, maybe you're not feeling well, maybe you have a chronic disease or illness. These automatically influence your state of regulation.
And now if we look at sensory processing, we see how information comes from our senses and how we respond to it.
So there are 8 different senses that our body uses each and every day to help us understand and respond to the world around us. There are 5 more commonly known senses, including sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. And there are 3 less commonly known senses that include proprioception, which is our sense of movement and knowing where our body is in space. Vestibular, which is our balance sense. And the last one is interoception, which is that internal sense of our biological state, such as knowing if we're hungry or if we need to use the washroom.
It's important for us to know that we are all wired differently. And as a result, how we register and respond to sensory inputs can also vary. How we as parents register and respond may not be the same as how your child registers and responds to the exact same input. For example, you may find the TV too loud, and your child may want it up louder. Or you may find dinner too spicy, but your child thinks it's bland, or your child may not notice that their clothes are crooked, and other people can't handle the seam of their socks or the tags on their clothing. You may find this with other people you live and work with as well. Our ability to respond to these inputs can fluctuate depending on the environment and other factors.
The emotional domain is how we process and respond to our feelings. All feelings are important and there are no wrong emotion. It is how we adapt and respond to our emotions that influence our ability to regulate. Children express their emotions in a variety of ways, and they may not have the right words to match how they truly feel. Children will often code emotions based on previous experiences or situations, both positively and negatively. For example, they may react with negative emotions to a previously traumatic event or situation. For example, a child may be upset prior to going into the bath based on a previous experience that they did not like the water and having their hair washed. When we have strong emotional responses, we become dysregulated. Therefore, thinking of the pyramid from earlier, these strong emotional responses can cause us to become dysregulated, resulting in the inability to access skills such as communication and learning to effectively express yourself and participate in activities. Again, if we think back to the Kristen Bell video and what her emotional response was to something that was so exciting for her, she was so excited that she became dysregulated. In contrast, when a child is having an emotional response, cueing them to say, use your words, is not necessarily an effective strategy, as we know from the pyramid that they are often not able to access their words when dysregulated. The cognition domain is how we think and learn. Cognition can include things like attention, memory, learning concepts, impulse control. We think and learn in a variety of ways, and some children can grasp concepts earlier than others, and others may have challenges in their learning. If expectations or demands are too high for the child, then they can become overwhelmed and potentially act out. It is important to be mindful of your child's learning ability and style and match that with your expectations. For example, when caregivers say, calm down to a typically developing preschool child, that expectation is too high as they do not have the cognitive ability to necessarily understand what that means and therefore be unable to access appropriate skills in order to calm. Again, cognitive skills may be impaired in children with exceptionalities such as autism spectrum disorder and other developmental delays.
So the next few slides are to show and explain that the ability to self-regulate develops over time from infancy through to adulthood. When we look at infants, we know that the majority of brain development and neuronal connections happen in the first 5 years of our lives. A baby's brain is about a quarter the size of an adult's brain. Throughout the first year of life, they are developing so many connections to learn about their own selves, the world around them, and how they interact with the world around them. How these connections are formed as these babies develop depend on the interactions with their caregiver. When born, infants rely solely on caregivers to meet their basic needs. These needs are primarily biological and sensory based. Attachment styles are formed at this early stage. How the infant is responded to by their caregivers will impact how the child responds to different sensors and how they regulate as they develop and grow. Infants react to different sensory input. For example, they may cry with too much noise, or they may need their caregiver to rock or bounce them. Over the first year of life, infants begin to learn strategies to get their needs met and feel regulated through things like sucking, kicking, rocking, looking away, and perhaps closing their mouth. Toddlers continue their rapid brain development. They begin to develop some independent skills, language skills, social skills, and play skills. However, they still continue to rely heavily on caregivers to help them meet their regulation needs. They learn through observation, imitation, and play skills, and also modeling from others. The ability to learn to regulate is also learned in this manner through co-regulation. School-age children have higher level independence skills, language skills, social skills, and play skills. At this time, they have learned what it feels like to be regulated. They can now begin to identify their regulation needs and use appropriate strategies. They can develop their ability to reflect on their needs and problem solve for future solutions, but they can't always do it in the moment. They are beginning to understand the perspective of others and their own unique needs. School-age children continue to develop their regulation skills through co-regulation and self-awareness. Teenagers gain further understanding of their needs and sense of self. They practice interrelationships, however, they continue to need co-regulation and support from others. Even though preteens and teenagers have these higher level skills needed for self-regulation, they still do rely on co-regulation to manage their bigger events and emotions. Adults continue to develop self-regulation skills. As adults, we can typically stay regulated by drawing on strategies that we know work for us to return to a calm, alert, and responsive state when we become dysregulated. As adults, we have developed the ability to self-regulate. However, we can still become dysregulated and need co-regulation support from others at times. We have learned to balance our own needs and the needs of others that rely on us. Our ability to self-regulate is a skill that evolves throughout development. It is important to be aware of where your child is at in their development. This includes cognition, emotion, sensory, and biological development to ensure that your expectations are appropriate. There is a range for development of regulation skills, similar to motor milestones, as not all children develop them at the same time. This ability to self-regulate can also be impacted for those children with exceptionalities such as autism spectrum disorder and ADHD.
Now that we have talked about the development of self-regulation, let's talk about the states of regulation. There are 3 states of regulation that we will discuss. Self-regulation is our desired state of regulation. When we are self-regulating, we are able to adjust our own state of arousal to meet the demand of any given situation, allowing us to stay calm, alert, and responsive. Co-regulation is where we expect our young children to be most of the time, relying on others to help them return to a regulated state in order to be responsive, engaging, and learn. Dysregulation is where we can all find ourselves when we are unable to draw on appropriate strategies to manage the stressors and expectations. Children, and at times adults, may move in and out of these states throughout the day. Why does it seem like your child is overreacting to the smallest things? According to Jan Blackswell from Kids Have Stress Too, young children have challenges in coping with stress and maintaining a calm, alert, and regulated state because their brains are still developing this capacity. So, what often seems like a really small thing to us as parents may, in fact, actually be a really big thing to our child because they have such limited resources to deal with that problem. We, as adults and caregivers, need to readjust our expectations as our children are still learning how to be and feel regulated. So, what is dysregulation from a physiological perspective? We have sensors throughout our body that let us identify incoming information. Based on our perception, past experiences, sensory thresholds, biological factors, etc., we could have a negative or positive experience or reaction to this incoming information. This information is coded in our central nervous system. What one person sees as a stress or threat may not be to another. When the experience or input is seen as a threat or stress, our bodies release stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. When these stress hormones are released, our central nervous systems puts our body into a fight, flight, or freeze response. In this state, the higher level cognitive skills such as listening, talking, reacting appropriately are not accessible by the individual. Thinking again back to the pyramid. In this stress response, the child does not feel safe. Children demonstrate this by running away, pushing, hitting, or grabbing when frustrated, or maybe they just stand there and shut down and not say or do anything. This is what the parents and caregivers often describe as the behavior, and they are letting us know in this state that they need our help. There are many common stressors for children, such as the child's biology, so their sensory and motor system, their nutritional intake, their sleep quality, their physical activity level, the stressors in the environment. For example, is there too much noise, too much light, too many people, and unpredictable routines and expectations. Remembering that the state of regulation of caregivers and parents also influence the state of regulation of their child or children, there are common stressors for those parents and caregivers as well. These include balancing work, home, and life, being pulled in multiple directions, that constant meeting of your child's needs. Maybe you've had little sleep, maybe your nutrition isn't on point. Again, managing those different expectations of loved ones, and there could be external stressors. Think about the current COVID-19 pandemic has all kind of flipped our world upside down. So let's just reflect and do a quick check-in to where you are feeling right now. Are you feeling calm and regulated? Are you feeling anxious or stressed? So when someone is dysregulated, this is not a teachable moment. Remember that when dysregulated, it is difficult to access your higher level cognitive skills. For example, this is not the time to use phrases such as calm down or use your words or tell me what's wrong, as your child may not be capable in understanding or knowing what to do in that state of dysregulation. It is not until someone is calm and regulated can you then have that teachable moment. So when your child is dysregulated, we as parents and caregivers need to support them in becoming regulated, and this is often accomplished through what we call as co-regulation. Co-regulation, as defined by Katie Crosby, occupational therapist, is emotionally organizing with the support of a trusted other. Co-regulation is crucial in helping to model and teach the child what it feels like and how to appropriately become regulated. When thinking of co-regulation, it is important to be the calm in the storm for your overwhelmed and dysregulated child. So what does co-regulation look like? Co-regulation is emotionally connecting with others. It can occur in a variety of relationships, such as your life partner, friends, coworkers, etc. Co-regulation can be positive or negative. It is also the ability to recognize the need for regulating and calming in others. Co-regulation is using and or modeling strategies with others to support them in feeling regulated. And again, it's being the calm in the storm for others. So why is co-regulation so important? Co-regulation is important to helping a child learn how to feel, be, and maintain regulation. Children learn how to respond appropriately from others in order to return to a regulated state. As we said earlier, our kids are often not developmentally ready to handle all stress on their own, and they lack the experience to know how to handle the situation. When a person feels heard and connected, they can typically calm and regulate sooner and more easily.
Seeing that co-regulation is important to supporting regulation, how can you co-regulate with your child? So we'd like to point out that the calming process starts with you, the adult. Your child needs you to be the calm in their storm. We want you to take a moment to observe how you are feeling and to take the first steps to finding your own calm, such as calming, deep breathing, going for a walk, calling a friend. We know that calming yourself will promote calming in your child at the same time. We'd ask you to be mindful of your own triggers and how you respond. There are some activities that may calm you and your child together. Remember, your child's job at this time is to play. Keep the joy and playfulness in activities to support regulation. Doing what calms you can also calm your child. As you calm, they calm as well. Show them what you do to calm. We've shown some activities such as coloring or dancing, playing with water, Play-Doh or other tactile activities, reading books, or just snuggling up and having a quiet moment together. Often the strategies used with an infant are the same strategies that continue to be helpful when your child is dysregulated. These strategies may include being attentive, get down to their level, listen and observe your child. This may mean that you need to put the phone down, put your computer away, or stopping washing dishes just to give your child that a time. Validate your child's feelings. Let them know that you know how they feel. Are they sad? Are they angry? Then you can take them to a safe place or remove others as you're able. Oftentimes this may be going and snuggling in their room or bringing them to your room. Reduce the stimuli. This is a great time to turn the TV off so your child is not overwhelmed by the sound and that you can focus on your child without being distracted. Another way is to use soothing sounds, usually instead of words. Let them know that you're just there to help them calm. This is not a time when your child is becoming dysregulated to do a lot of problem solving. Using a quiet and oftentimes a deeper voice can help the child to get into a calm state as well. We would ask you to slow your overall cadence with your voice, sounds, and movement. Your child may also benefit from rocking, similar to when they're a baby, swaddling or bear hugs. Limiting or avoiding eye contact can also be helpful at this stage, so your child knows that you're not being confrontational, but you're there to offer them the support that they need.
So now that your child has calmed, it is important to be able to be the detective in order to determine what caused them to become dysregulated. What was the child trying to communicate? It is important to be proactive and not reactive. What does your child need to be set up for success to help them remain regulated and be able to learn? So we often need to think of the following things. They need consistent routines and achievable expectations. We need to think about your child's sensory preferences and sensitivities. We also need to think about the environmental factors and the biological factors. And always we need to remember that state of co-regulation. So when thinking about setting your child up for success, it is calming to know what to expect through consistent routines and expectations. This can be achieved through the following strategies. So using visual schedules, using warnings for upcoming transitions, pairing that with some simple first, then language. So for example, first eat, then bath. Use activities with a clearly defined end point, for example, a puzzle, or you could use a timer such as the microwave timer or a timer on your cell phone to define when that activity is over. You also need to think about the developmental and cognitive level of your child and ensure that your expectation matches their ability. For example, if their language is delayed, you saying, "Tell me what's wrong," is not necessarily a reasonable request because they don't have the language to articulate that. We also need to be mindful of your environment. So if you're in a rush, for example, likely not the time to have your child work on dressing skills in order to get out the door in the morning. You also want to offer choices during negotiable times within a routine. For example, bedtime is a non-negotiable routine, but choosing what book they want to read can be a negotiable moment in that routine. So just to talk a little bit more about sensory, remember from earlier that we are all wired differently, and as a result, how we register and respond to sensory inputs also varies. Sensory has a direct impact on our state of regulation, and throughout each day, we need to continually adjust our inputs in order to meet our regulation needs. For example, when you are at work and you have been sitting too long, you may get up and walk around or get a drink in order to refocus your attention to complete the task at hand. This constant adjustment to find the just right sensory input comes easily for some and is more challenging for others. For children, this constant adjustment can use a lot of energy, which therefore limits their ability to cope with other stressors and the ability to stay regulated. So for example, a child who managed well during the day at daycare may come home and have a meltdown during a task that they typically could easily complete. This demonstrates that the child has used up all of their resources and energy to have a good day at daycare and have nothing left in the tank to execute that task at home. Thinking about your child's sensory preferences and sensitivities, what adjustments can we offer them from a sensory perspective in order to be proactive and helping them feel regulated and be ready to learn versus reacting after they have already become overwhelmed and are potentially dysregulated? Perhaps they need some calming activities to alleviate some of their stress, or maybe they need some alerting activities to help kind of rev them up in order to engage and learn. Or perhaps they just need some organizing strategies for them to kind of slow down to focus. Again, the goal with sensory is that us as parents and caregivers is helping your child to adjust their sensory needs in order to maintain that regulated state. And every child is different, and each environment and situation can have them using different sensory preferences. Calming activities can be used at times when children become overwhelmed, appear anxious or uneasy about unfamiliar activities or situations. An analogy that we often use in our practice for these type of children is that we refer to them as rabbit. Rabbit being from Winnie the Pooh. That rabbit from Winnie the Pooh often presents with many of the same characteristics, where he's kind of overreacts to things or appears stressed. So knowing your child's sensory preferences can help you be proactive in providing the necessary calming activities before your child potentially becomes dysregulated. So calming activities in general are ones with repetition and familiarity. These include warm baths, maybe playing soft music, some slow rocking or slow linear swinging, maybe some little massage or hugs or cuddling. Maybe they need some headphones or a headband over their ears to help decrease some of the noise. Or maybe they just need, something to suck on. So like a drink from a straw, anything along those lines can help support calming. Alerting activities are used at times when children may present as understimulated, not engaged, they may look like they're quote unquote turned off, and we want them to be calm and alert and ready to learn. An analogy that we often use in practice to represent these kids is that we say that they kind of look like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Again, being proactive in providing this alerting input can help avoid dysregulation. And remember that dysregulation can also look like the child is disengaged or in the freeze state of stress. So alerting activities are ones with intensity, complexity, and unexpectedness. So maybe giving your child a quick swing, some bouncing, some spinning, chewing, eating really cold foods like ice cubes, playing in cold water, maybe even doing some active games like animal walks such as bear walks or crab walks. Just be mindful with alerting activities that sometimes too much alerting activities can then put the kids into shutdown. So you need to find that just right balance for them to be regulated and engaged. Organizing activities can be used frequently throughout the day to help a child be calm, alert, and regulated. These types of activities can benefit many children, especially those with lots of energy. As occupational therapists, we often call these children, or we often say these children are busy and on the go. Another analogy that we often use in practice to describe these children is that we say they're like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. So organizing activities are ones that involve heavy work and deep pressure. So activities that can be used are anything with pushing, pulling, carrying, lifting heavier things, and any type of activities that involves deep pressure to the joints. So jumping, bouncing, crawling, rolling, all of these kinds of activities provide great sensory input for that kid to help them feel regulated.
When thinking about setting the child up for success, it is important to not only look at the child in isolation, it's important to look at the environment that they are in. So some things that you need to consider are, is it too loud or is it too quiet? Sometimes it's too quiet for a child and they're looking to be making noises or that extra stimulation. Or is it really busy and chaotic? Oftentimes this can be during family events or birthday parties. Are there too many things to see, to do, and touch? Are there too few things to do, see, and touch? So the child is looking for that extra stimulation. Are there a lot of people present? Could your child benefit from going to sit in a bedroom for a while at a birthday party or a family Thanksgiving? Is there a routine and or an expectation that is consistent? So think about a birthday party. Could your child attend early in the birthday party so they're not arriving when the birthday party is already in swing? Has your child been here before, or have they experienced something similar to this? Remember your child's sensory preferences. How can you create a supportive environment for your child and their regulation needs? So again, we're looking at, does your child need a quiet space? Do they need a safe, active place where they can run around without getting hurt? Is playing soft music soothing for your child? What about decreasing distractions as able? So sometimes this involves turning the TV off, putting toys into boxes or bins so that it's not visually overwhelming for them, and just bringing a few toys out at a time. Sometimes this includes minimizing what is in the child's bedroom so they have less to be stimulated with. What about cushions? Does your child benefit from being snuggled up amongst a variety of cushions or perhaps a beanbag chair? Or positioning. Does your child benefit from being laying down on their stomach or perhaps lying on their back or being snuggled up in amongst two different adults? What about the energy of the environment and people in the environment? So oftentimes we hear that busy children seek out other busy children at daycare, or perhaps a child is gravitating towards another child who's crying, and perhaps those children would benefit from the support of changing their environment. Also consider, for environmental strategies, minimizing scheduled activities and events. So sometimes we as parents want to provide our children with the most beneficial activities and swimming lessons and piano lessons and gymnastics, and oftentimes children just need the calm and quiet of coming home and relaxing. When we're thinking about environmental situations and setup, we also would like to encourage families to take their children outside. So we know from research that the importance of being outside and how it reduces stress for all. Children benefit immensely from being outside and exploring in nature. There are many ways to meet children's sensory needs in natural ways, and outside time spent in nature has a variety of benefits, including reducing stress, increasing immunity, calming the mind, increasing attention and focus skills, and it encourages healthy exploration in all. So now let's talk about some of the biological factors. When thinking of setting your child up for success, it is also important to remember these biological factors that influence regulation. For example, are you or your child hungry? Is your child eating a variety of healthy foods? Is your child thirsty? Is your child tired? Perhaps they're not getting enough sleep. Is your child feeling well and healthy? Could your child be teething? Or is your child having some memories of past experiences that may be playing a role or impacting the child in that particular situation? So now we'd like to talk about ways that co-regulation can help set your child up for success. Setting your child up for success involves having close emotional connections with your child where they feel heard, understood, and supported to get through the challenges in their lives. Children do best when supported by calm, loving, patient, and responsive people. It is through the co-regulation support that is offered to a child that allows them to do their best. Co-regulation not only supports your child through a state of dysregulation, but it also supports them in remaining regulated in order to learn and engage in those key teachable moments. Being available to your child during play and activities gives them many opportunities throughout the day to practice learning about their emotions and problem solving through difficult situations. Remember that co-regulation is the key foundation for self-regulation, and that young children rely heavily on adults and others to feel regulated. We ask you to be mindful of your own state of regulation and how that is always influencing your child's, both positive and negative. And we ask families to do some self-checks throughout the day to support a calm state, both for yourself and for others.
So in summary, based on everything we've talked about today, the key points are that regulation develops over time. The ability to regulate is a key factor for future success. Co-regulation is a key foundation. And kids do well if they can. So if your child's, what you see as a behavior, you have to think to yourself, what is your child trying to tell you? When dysregulated, the only goal at that time is to support your child in calming. Once calm, you can then create those teachable moments and use strategies to help set your child up for success throughout the day to help them support and maintain a regulated state. For next steps, if you require any further support or information, please contact your occupational therapist. For more information, please check out the Simcoe County Early Intervention website located here at the link provided. On this website, there are many video modules, handouts, and other information sheets to help best support your child's development. For further information regarding regulation, co-regulation, and helping to support that, please check out the following links. There's the video from Dr. Stuart Shanker's from Self-Regulation. There's also a lovely video here kind of putting it all together on why and how do we lose control of our emotions, which is related to regulation. And then I also just included the Ellen DeGeneres video with Kristen Bell again.